Hi, this is Honey, and welcome to CEO Unplugged. Today, we're sitting down with Elias Husamudeen, who happens to be the president of the Correction Officers Benevolent Association. Welcome to CEO Unplugged.
Thank you.
I'm very excited to have you here. And, we're talking behind the scenes, and I have a strong connection to not only correction officers, but Rikers Island in general, not just through my family, but also through having watched all the struggles that the correctional officers have faced, working there throughout the years. And, it's always in the news.
Yes.
How hard is your position as far as leading inside Rikers and making sure correction officers, are taken care of?
It has its moments. Usually when I'm in the news, it's because of something that went wrong and never because of something that went right. So it's not, I like it. I enjoy what I do. I am a correction officer. I've been a correction officer for 30 years.
So you understand
yes.
the inside workings and the struggles that your men face and women.
I definitely understand it, and I understand it from both sides. I have a sister who's a correction officer, but I have about 3 or 4 brothers who are inmates. Either at one time or another.
Okay.
I have other relatives who find themselves on the other side of the bar. So I'm not just looking at it, just from the point of view of a correction officer. I'm looking at it just from a point of view of somebody who find themselves in an industry or in a business that has to do with crime.
Now, as far as the union's accomplishments, what have been some of the biggest accomplishments that you guys have achieved?
Well, over the last 20 years, I've been in the union for the last 20 years. I'm the president. I was the first vice president of the union, and I was the treasurer for the union. Over the years, we've been able to achieve quite a few things for correction officers that we never had before we got there. Such things such as if they get hurt going out on 3/4 disability, such as if they have a heart attack, it is assumed that this heart attack happened because of the stressful job that we have. And again, they get three-quarters of their income. We were successful in, getting an anti-privatization bill, which keeps the city and the state from privatizing our jobs, and just a lot of raises and money and benefits and things of that nature that we've been successful in acquiring for correctional.
Now, those same men and women that you advocate for, and you make sure they're well taken care of. What do you think is one of the biggest misconceptions that we have when it comes to correctional officers, the work that they do, and their relationship with inmates, let's say?
I think that over the years, correction officers have been demonized or turned into a villain. Of late, with the advocates, we hear things such as Rikers Island culture of violence. Correction officers create a culture of violence, and like nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, if you watch television and you saw the 12 people who killed Guzman Jr. in the Bronx,
yes.
Those 12 people are violent, were violent, and guess where they sent them?
To
us, to Rikers Island. If you watched TV just a couple of weeks ago and you saw the 6 guys chasing the other guy with the gun, climbing the fence and shooting at him, they're violent. Guess where they sent them?
Rikers.
To us, to Rikers Island. And then they turn around and say what? Correction officers create a culture of violence. That is like my biggest pet peeve, because nothing can be further from the truth. Unfortunately, we find ourselves having to deal and have people in custody who are usually there for violence. And of late, right now, we have more jails in the New York City jail system than we've had in decades. More gangs in the jails. We have I won't even name them, but we have them. And anybody that know anything about gangs know, what do? They fight.
They do, yeah.
They commit crimes. So guess where they are? They're with us.
Yeah.
And everybody says correction officers create a culture of violence. 45% of my correction officers, I have 11,000 active members.
Wow.
45% of them are women. Aunties, grandmothers, mothers, sisters. Most people don't know that. Most people, when they think of correction officers, they think of your guy right there.
Yeah.
They think of some dude that's 6 foot, 200 pounds. That's just not the reality. Most of my correction officers look like you.
Now, being that you have this type of environment, that officers are having to deal with, straight violent criminals, does Rikers have a different type of training for their correctional officers that, let's say, maybe someone in Ohio or Mississippi might not have to go through?
Well, believe it or not, throughout the country, the training for correction officers are basically the same.
Okay.
We actually end up, we have to take penal law, correction law. We have to, there's a whole lot of different things in the training that we get. We have to do the physical training and things of that nature. But to be honest with you, the training at the academy is not what really makes a good correction officer. It's having a little bit of street smarts, because most of the people that you're dealing with are coming from the streets. So the training that we get in the academy, it helps.
Yeah.
But it's not really the driving force. If you don't know how to communicate, if you are afraid of confrontation,
Yeah.
Those are things that they really can't teach you at the academy. So the training is good. It could be better. It could be more. Our academy training is 6 months. And, like I said, it could be better, it could be more. But you're a correction officer. Most correction officers are correction officers at heart.
Now, with my own personal experience, sometimes being a correctional officer changes a person. Do correctional officers actually get any type of therapy, mental help, if they feel like they're breaking down or they're becoming a totally different person? Is that a thing?
Well, I got to be honest with you. Usually going into law enforcement changes you. You usually end up seeing things and dealing with things that the average person don't deal with. Like, there are a lot of, most people don't appreciate the sense of humor, things that law enforcement, correction cops, that we may laugh at.
Yeah.
And people are like, how could you laugh at that?
That's not funny.
And it's just something that's in our world that we see. But to answer your question, that's one of the things as the union that I'm pushing for now, PTSD.
Yes.
Because most people don't understand when your job consists of every single day, either breaking up a fight, being involved in a fight, being involved in confrontation, trying to get people to do something that they don't want to do, can create problems.
Trauma.
And that is actually something now of late that a lot of the unions and a lot of the agencies are now taking a look at.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm pretty sure it's going to help not only the correctional officers, but the families.
Yes.
When they come home and, if you've already experienced something super traumatic at work, like sometimes a train comes too close to me and I feel shooken up for a little while. I can only imagine a full blown fight and someone gets hurt or a cut or something, how for the rest of the day, the week, the month, you might feel. Now, there's also been a lot of talk in the news about closing Rikers. For those who might be watching this interview and not understand the reasoning behind why people want to close Rikers and want to do away with it, what's the problem with Rikers Island?
Well, this is going to take up the rest of the interview.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well,
but no,
give me the Cliff Notes.
the Cliff Note. Listen, first and foremost, as a correction officer, we don't really care where the jail is located.
Okay, so it's not the COs that have the problem.
So most people think that it has something to do with the building,
the location.
and the location.
Yeah.
The building and the location is not going to reduce crime, reduce violence. It's not a physical thing. The shutdown Rikers is about, it's a land grab, okay? It's about extending and expanding LaGuardia Airport. It's about extending and expanding the runway. But what they like to do is say that we want to shut down Rikers. Just for those who don't know, Rikers Island is 420 acres. Wow. It's in East Elmhurst, New York, Queens. You can take a city bike and ride there.
I've driven past.
There are approximately 10 jails on Rikers Island. Most people, when they say Rikers Island, they say Rikers Island Jail.
Yeah.
They don't even understand that there are 10 jails on Rikers. They don't understand that we have a transportation division that has like more than 1,500 vehicles. They don't understand that we have a firehouse. They don't understand that we have a bakery that bake all the bread for the homeless shelters in the city. They don't understand that there's like 2,000 parking spots. So they're saying shut down Rikers. The reality is regardless of where you put a jail, if the jail is not going to be safe, it doesn't really matter where you put it. The problem with the shutdown Rikers for us is this. I live in the 5 boroughs. I live in Staten Island. I'm from Harlem, but I live in Staten Island. I don't want a jail in my neighborhood. I'm quite sure you don't want one in your neighborhood. And I'm quite sure nobody in this room wants a jail, a 24-hour operation. Look, let me say this. I don't want a jail on my block. I don't want a school on my block. I don't want a firehouse on my block. I don't want a precinct on my block. Why? All of those things, they affect the parking. They affect 24-hour operation, lights and sirens. Why? Rikers Island is in a remote part of Queens, and it's right there. But as opposed to saying we want the island because we want to make LaGuardia an international airport, they say we got to close it because there's a culture of violence and because it's antiquated. Look, just be real, be straight.
Yeah.
Or like, who is it, Tony Braxton? Just be a man about it. Say, I want the island.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Just keep it 100, as
Yes,
we would say.
That's it.
Now, I was recently doing research. You know, it's like lately I've been wanting to like help, give back to the community. And I was like, I told my husband, I said, I want to bail out some young girls out of Rikers Island. He said, do your research. I do my research. And it tells me, they're like, oh, okay, there's barely any people I can bail out of Rikers Island. We have this big misconception that a lot of people are sitting in Rikers because they cannot afford bail. This is all thanks to the very well done Khalif Browder special that we saw. Then I read more about Khalif Browder, and it wasn't that he couldn't afford the bail, it was that he violated probation, and then that's why he ended up staying there. You know, God bless his family, R.I.P. to him.
Right.
Why is it that people think so many people are sitting in Rikers for no reason?
You know what people miss? Jail, crime is a business. Jail is a business. Bail is a multi-million-dollar business. Here's the reality. Currently, we have less than 7,500 inmates in the New York City jail system, which includes Rikers.
Okay.
Less than 7,500. The reality is, the ones that we have there, they're not turnstile jumpers. They're not open containers.
They don't have a dime bag?
They're not marijuana smokers.
Yeah.
They're the ones that you people, the courts, the community have said, we don't want them here. This is who we have. Most of them are not even bailable. And the ones who
That's what
are
I found
bailable,
out.
you might not. Example, let me give you an example. The 6 that we saw on TV chasing the guy and shooting at him.
Yeah.
There is a possibility that they have bail. And there's a possibility that they don't. The ones who don't, they get remanded. There's no bail. You're staying here until we finish your case. We have inmates on Rikers who have a $250,000 bail. It could be one of those 6. The ones who killed little Guzman Jr. in the Bronx could have a bail. The reality is, do you want them out?
No.
And do you want them to make bail? Now, let's not get it confused because that's not what bail was about. Bail was just to ensure that you were going to come back to court. That's the purpose of bail. It's taken a different meaning. But in all honesty, your husband is smart and he's right. Do your homework because they just recently bailed out an inmate and it was on a domestic case.
That.
And the guy came home and he killed his wife.
Yes, I saw that.
And my argument have always been, what about the victim? I understand that you want to bail out whoever or you want to do this philanthropic type of thing. But what about the victim? What about Miss Sarah, who now can't go to the supermarket, who have to be careful if she go in her building, she's going to get stomped out. But what about her? So you're going to bail out the guy who stomped her out. But what about her? What about the person who was raped? What about the person who was robbed? What about the victim of the people that you want to bail out? I'm not against bail. And it may sound crazy as a correctional officer, president of the union, but for a long time, there were people in jail who really just shouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
We're not oblivious to that. It's a reality. And if you want to address that and reform, let's address it. But at the end of the day, on the bail side, just remember the victim.
That's an amazing way to put it. Now, as far as jail violence, where are we at right now? Is it controlled? Is it still a problem? How are we here in New York and more specifically in Rikers?
See, this is what most people don't understand. Jail is always going to be violent. Just by the fact of the people that you're sending there. Now, don't get it twisted. Don't get it wrong. Out of the 7,500 inmates we have, 7,500 inmates are not there committing violence, even though some of the ones who are there for that. For whatever reason, there's a population of them who have decided that they're going to continue to roll and to live the life
of crime
that they lived in the street in jail. Most of our inmates don't really give us problems. Most of them don't. There's just a small population. So to answer your question, we're never going to eliminate violence from a jail. The only thing that we're going to be able to do is to control it. We have to be able to control it. And there are different methods and different tools that we've used to control it. Like we use what we call punitive segregation, which some people call solitary confinement.
Yeah.
We call punitive seg. We have no longer have that for 18 to 21-year-olds. That's crazy. Why? Because guess who are the most violent population in jail? The 18 to 21-year-olds. Usually the guy that's 30, 29, they've already figured it out.
Yeah.
Maybe too late, but they're in there and they just want to go home or they want to go to the kid or whatever. But the 18 to 21-year-olds, you know how they are on the street. We have nephews and
rowdy
brothers
and feisty.
And they eliminated that. What was punitive segregation? We were able to separate them from the rest of the inmates and from correction officers for 23 hours a day. They would be locked in. And when they're allowed to go back into general population, we hope that they, being segregated, did something to change their mind. And it's one of the tools that's been taken away from us, which is part of the reason why the violence is as high as it is, because it was the most effective tool, according to us, according to correction officers. Like I was a Bing officer. When I was in jail in uniform, I worked the box, the Bing. That was my steady post. And the reality is, like I say to most people, most of the inmates that we used to get in the box or in the Bing, after they did their time in there, most of them never came back to the box or the Bing, even though they never left jail. They never came back there. And I've come to the conclusion that the 1% who kept coming back over and over should have never been with us. Because if you're put in the Bing, the box, solitary confinement, whatever you want to call it, and over 30 days, and you come out, and your behavior hasn't changed, you have a bigger problem, and you don't belong with COs. You belong with the Department of Mental Health, Bellevue, Creedmoor, or wherever it is that they want to put you, but you have a problem. And what are we going to do? Continuously fight with you? Continuously go back and forth with you? It's something that we need to pay more attention to.
Now, right now, the force is probably the most racially diverse, male, women. Do you feel like that's a good thing for the force, being from all races and genders and everything?
I think in the city of New York, if you look at any agency, and especially law enforcement, you will find that corrections, the Department of Corrections, is the most diverse agency in the city. We are predominantly African-American Latinos. And, we have our now, the numbers of Asians, Indians, and different things, but it is diverse. And I think that is one of the reasons why we are able to really do our job well, because we come from all of the different communities, all the different walks of life, and it makes it easier for us to be able to identify with the person that we have been placed in charge of, in my opinion.
Now, if someone was thinking about, seeking a career as a correctional officer? What are all the things that would make this a great job?
Well, let me explain. First of all, the benefits are fantastic. The medical benefits, the drug prescription plan. Let me tell you something. New York City correction officers are actually the most educated correction officers in the country.
Do you require that they have a degree?
You're required to have 60 college credits, an associate's degree. So out of my 11,000 members, I would say more than 90% of them have 60 college credit, bachelor's degree, associate's degree. The job itself it's really rewarding. It's a good job. I have a lot of people with bachelor's degrees, and they come in, and once they see what the benefits are like, once they see, wow, after 5 years, I can actually be making six figures. It starts at 46, 47,000, but when you reach senior of 5 years. And that's not counting overtime, because in the New York City Department of Corrections, we have what we call mandatory overtime.
Okay.
Like, you don't have a choice. You do your first 8,
I
you
go
might
home.
have to do another 8, and it's mandatory.
Yeah.
And it's part of your contract,
Okay.
part of what you signed up to do. But it's a good job. It's very rewarding. One of the things that most people don't get from correction officers is this: inmates wait for correction. If you're a correction officer, they would wait for you to come in. Oh, hi, Miss Honey, Honey, because you're their only connection to the outside.
To the outside world.
And depending on who you are as a correction officer, if you actually talk to them, if you actually try to find out and help understand why they're doing what they're doing, guess who they connect to?
Me.
They connect to you. And the reality is that's what we are. A correction officer is not just a correction officer. We're counselors. We're mental health workers. We are mommies and daddies to these people, and there are a lot of roles that we play in being a correction officer, and it is a very rewarding career actually.
Now, in the past, you've said that that the city of New York has the largest mental health facility in the East Coast. What does that mean exactly?
It means that we are actually running. We are actually responsible for more people suffering from mental illness in the East Coast than the state and city government in the entire East Coast. We have more. Currently, they have determined that 40% of our inmates suffer from mental illness. So that's 40% of currently 7,500 people. And they've also determined that 14% of them suffer from serious mental illness. Guess where they are?
Rikers.
In the jails.
In the jails.
They're not in any of the mental health facilities here in this state or in this city or anywhere else in the East Coast. They're actually in the New York City jail system. And guess who's with them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? The New York City correction officer. The psych may see them once. Currently, the psych see them once every 14 days.
So is that something that you're lobbying for, that, people, once they're determined that they are not mentally, okay, why does the CEO have to continue to monitor someone that they weren't even trained to deal with?
Well, see, we do receive mental health training. But not enough.
Okay, I can see
not
that.
Enough.
Yeah, not enough to...
Right. So what I'm advocating for is that we get more mental health training.
Okay.
And the reality is the governor, the mayor, they're not going to reopen the mental health facilities in this state or this city. They damn near closed them all. There are very few mental health facilities in the state in the city of New York.
So they're just like in the street or locked up?
Yes. And basically they're warehousing them. So what we're saying is, if they're going to be with us, then give us the additional training.
Yes.
We're not psychiatrists. We're not trying to be. We're not therapists. We're not trying to be, although we're filling all these different shoes. We're pharmacists. We're taking them to the pharmacy. We have to know that if inmate Brown doesn't get his medication, that is a problem. That if inmate Brown walks in this room and see you with that color on, there's a possibility that this room is going to be tore up. We have to know that.
Yeah.
But we also have to know that if inmate Brown don't get his medication, what's going to happen. So we're there. And what all we're saying is give us the additional training. We're even saying take one of the facilities and make it a dedicated mental health facility so that you can bring in the mental health people, so that you can bring in the different type of people that, we may need to service these inmates, because correction officers are responsible for three things: care, custody, and control. That's we call it the 3 C's. We do care, custody, and control. Custody and control we got. Care is usually where the problem comes in.
I can see why, though. Now, what are your goals for the next year for COBA?
Sort of like what we've been talking about. I would like to have a dedicated jail to house mentally ill inmates. I would like to have correction officers receive much more training than we have. Of course, I'm going to be fighting for correction officers to get a raise, because we're now working without a contract. And as far as legislation and things of that is concerned, there are different things that we need the Albany people, the legislators to do to help us, that can actually help us have safer jails. We just recently was able to get Albany to give us, to approve us to have scanners. The airport likes the scanners, because right now in jail, we have metal detectors, right? Mm-hmm. That played out.
Doesn't work no more.
Inmates, we call it boofing. They take their weapons, they swam, they shove it up there, and the metal detector can't detect it.
Yeah.
So now we were able to convince Albany to give us the scanner, the iron, so now we can actually detect non-metallic weapons. So there are other things that we need Albany to do. There are other things that we need City Hall to do. So, in fighting for correction officers, we're fighting for safer jails, but it's not just for us. It's for everybody, because everybody deserves to be safe. It doesn't matter why you're in jail. I don't care if you're there for non-payment of child support. You shouldn't go to jail and come home with 100 stitches across your face.
You should not.
You shouldn't be a correction officer in uniform and get stabbed. You shouldn't be an inmate and get raped. None of those things should be happening in jail. So, one of the things that we're fighting for is to make the jail safer for everybody.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for coming in, and thank you so much for not only just advocating for your correctional officers, but also trying to make it, a safe space for everyone, including the inmates.
Absolutely.
As you said, if you went there to serve time for a certain crime, you shouldn't be further victimized or even, killed. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate you. It was a great conversation. We're going to talk a little bit more behind the scenes, how I can help without getting the wrong people out. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.